Thanks so much for joining. We're really excited for today's conversation about downcoding. Before we dive in, a couple quick housekeeping items as folks are trickling in. We'll be recording this session, so we'll send it out to all of our attendees later today, along with some other helpful resources that we'll probably touch on in the conversation. Also, we'll have some time for questions, so feel free to send those through the chat, and I can either answer them through the chat as they come through, or we can follow up afterwards with anything that we don't get to. But I think with that, we can go ahead and get started. So we'll set the scene here by meeting our speakers. We have an amazing lineup of panelists today. We have Chris, Janet, and Michelle. Chris and Janet are from ApolloMD, and Michelle works with me here at Adonis. Would love to give you each a few minutes just to go down the line, introduce yourselves, talk a little bit about your role. Chris, maybe we can start with you and we can just kind of go down the line here.
Sure. Hi again. My name is Chris Bushore. I'm a VP of Revenue Cycle at ApolloMD. Currently, my focus is I do have four teams that I manage: revenue integrity. I also manage our IDR team, cash reconciliation, and patient financial services. Um, my previous background was working for Athena Health for 10 years, so I did anything from claims to billing to enrollment to posting, all those. And previous to that, it's hard to say, 18 years worth of banking. So I've been in the financial segment of this for quite a while.
Great. Thank you so much for joining, Chris. Janet, maybe you can go next.
Hi there, I'm Janet Russell, and I've been with Apollo for 9 years. I came from the credit balance team over to revenue integrity about a year ago, and we are definitely deep in downcoding with the revenue integrity team.
Thank you, Janet. And Michelle?
Thanks, Caroline. Hi, everybody. My name is Michelle Kadra-Masumba. I am a member of Adonis's partnerships team. My role is solution design, and it's my role and my responsibility is really to think through the practical application and deployment of Adonis Intelligence and Adonis's agents. I joined Adonis a little over 2 years ago now and came to Adonis after 17 years with Athena Health. And also spent some time with Flatiron focused on revenue cycle for oncology. So really excited to be here today, Caroline, and talk through downcoding.
Awesome. Thank you all. And I'm Caroline. I'm on the marketing team here at Adonis, and I'll be moderating today's conversation. So for a quick agenda, we're going to start a little bit just by talking about how downcoding is changing the conversation when it comes to reimbursement. Then we can talk a little bit about the shift in payer behavior. And then towards the end, I think it would be really great, Chris and Janet, to hear more about your experience at ApolloMD and things you guys are seeing out there and strategies you're implementing to help combat downcoding. I think our audience today would find that really valuable to walk away with some ideas and inspiration on how they can kind of take this to their organization. So, Michelle, I think it would be really helpful context for you to set the scene by telling us a little bit about downcoding and maybe how you'd go about explaining this issue to folks who aren't familiar, or maybe someone who's typically more focused on traditional denials.
Yeah. So for those in the audience that are unfamiliar with downcoding, this is a recent, I think I'll refer to it as a reimbursement reduction mechanism that the payers have come to the table with. That different from denials, which historically has how we have, observed or talked about leakage and reimbursement reduction. Downcoding is a matter of policy, or it's a new application of a payer payment policy whereby they are downcoding your services. And the reason that's being provided is it's for E&M coding accuracy. So you're submitting a level 5 office visit. They're going to downcode your service to a level 4 office visit and pay you for said level 4 office visit. And the tricky part of it is that unlike a denial, where a denial will be received and posted and observed as AR in your accounts receivable and routed to a workflow to be pursued, the downcoded claim, the payment is posted, the claim gives the appearance of being adjudicated and resolved, and yet the reimbursement that you have received is less than what you would have expected for the service that was provided and the claim that was submitted. And again, the payer, whether it's Cigna or United or whichever payer does have a public policy that they've announced into the marketplace and alerted us that they would be periodically down coding for E&M coding accuracy. These are difficult to identify in your accounts in your day-to-day accounts receivable because again they give the appearance of having been paid and resolved and yet the reimbursement is less than what was expected. It's difficult to track and it is in my opinion, a net new workflow that a business office needs to stand up, account for, because it's different than a denial. It's different than a claim that is perhaps, been picked up on as part of the No Surprises Act. It needs its own workflow, its own SOPs, and they need to be pursued, in my opinion, quickly. We need to be able to identify these, tag these, and get them into a workflow quickly to pursue for recovery. Chris, any thoughts? Or Janet?
So Michelle, you covered quite a bit of exactly what's happening too, and it is in a way hidden, like you say. The
Mhm.
payer makes a payment, thinks that what they've made is acceptable, unless you look at your EOB to define that it's been downcoded. You wouldn't know because, like most EMR systems, they post the claim, they post the contractual, and the claim gets closed. Um, so it is a pattern that in the past 2 years have been very eye-opening,
Mm.
especially for me because we've dedicated a team, our revenue integrity team, to work on these. Um, it's constantly happening. Sometimes, truthfully, the payers don't notify you. They may put it in a policy and they may deeply bury it in their web page. However, given the fact that it's a huge loss of revenue, it's something that we definitely need to, we constantly look for all the payers that are doing it, identifying it, utilizing the systems that we have to make sure that we build you for a certain amount, we're expected to get paid the reimbursement we're expected to get paid for.
Right. It truly is. I mean, Caroline, it truly is that quiet side or that slow leak of revenue that, like Chris said, unless you need to truly be looking for it, aggressively identifying those payers that have been very forthcoming about their, E&M coding accuracy policy, great. And then also monitoring all of the other payers where they may be down coding you systematically and it truly goes unnoticed because everything else appears to be resolved, adjudicated, and paid, but you've been downcoded and paid less.
Yeah, and Michelle, I know something we've spoken about in the past is how a lot of times it's such a small dollar amount that it feels like it's not even worth the effort to kind of go after. And then those like small claim differences can really add up over time. I guess Chris and Janet would love to hear if there was like any cases that come to mind for you where it felt like something has like really built up over time, coming from those like small dollar amounts.
So I think one thing that we look for when we're running our reports and stuff is typically because of sequestration, we won't look at anything that's 3% or below for variance. We focus, but the 4, the 5, the 6% variance, those add up,
Mm.
really do. So we have taken the tactful piece, and Janet can elaborate a little bit more on this. We go right after that 4%, that 5%, because if you think about it, you submit 10,000 claims and 4% is underpaid, you're still looking at $100,000.
Those little amounts add up really quickly. And until you're looking at the reports and thank goodness we have Adonis that we can run the report and it breaks it down. We're able to actually use that to say, okay, if we weren't going after these small amounts, these 3 or 4%, we're losing X amount of money. And we've had conversations about that. Like, do we go ahead and go after that the 4, 5, 6%, because it's not a whole lot, but it adds up over time.
Yeah.
Yeah, Caroline, I think this falls under definitely falls under that death by a thousand paper cuts
Mhm.
conversation that we're all always having. I mean, it's hard to know where to put the cutoff, but when you take it in aggregate and you think about the loss over the course of a year, um, I really do think we have a fiduciary responsibility to pursue all of these claims. And it does, it's obviously up to the individual practice, but I personally think, individually appealing them is important. I also think it's important to approach your payer partner with a recovery plan, a settlement sheet to make them aware of, this administrative burden that they're bringing into your organization.
Definitely. And I think that's a really great transition into kind of talking about that shift in payer behavior. Would love to talk about a little bit like why this has been working so well for payers, and then also why it's making it so hard on the provider side to track. Michelle, would love to hear more from you about like why you feel like it's become such a common lever than just like outright denying claims.
Yeah, I mean, I think for a long time with payers, and I know when Chris and I were both at Athena, I mean, we were hyper focused on the age of your AR and getting payers to the table and compelling them to pay you on time. So we crossed that. Then denials became a very popular mechanism for delaying reimbursement. And at Athena, we rolled out the rules engine, and they have this great strategy for codifying all of a payer's rules and ensuring claims that are submitted to the payer are clean before they're submitted so that they are payable upon receipt. And then along came downcoding. And downcoding is this, beautiful reimbursement reduction mechanism that the payer has applied, difficult to detect. I think I think it works for the payer. It, it's a more practical application to reduce reimbursement by the payer, because it's they're getting the claims out. They're addressing the clean claim payment methodology. They're able to pay the claims on time, and it's defensible because a lot of the payers, Cigna, United, have come to the table and said this is, they've disclosed this payer payment policy. They have the right to go ahead and downcode that claim, but we also have the right to obviously appeal that claim. So, um, I think it's easier. Quite frankly, I think downcoding is easier for the payer to manage. Um, because there are a lot of providers that are not going to be equipped to appeal every single claim, or even, if they establish a 4% or a 5% threshold, they may not have the resources to pursue those claims, and they do indeed have to, unfortunately, just forfeit those dollars. And I think the payers, they're leaning into that. Chris, I don't know. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, it does, Michelle. A couple of things that stick out to me on this slide, Caroline, especially, is the no trigger. The biggest thing is if the provider's not paying attention, or their staff isn't paying attention, if you aren't focused on those EOBs or running reports to say, hey, I'm supposed to get this much, why is it not getting there? The trigger is the biggest thing. You got to make sure that you're focused on the trigger piece of it too. One thing that Michelle said that really hits for me is the fact that we are submitting clean claims as the payer requests,
Mhm.
and they still decide to do this.
Yeah.
So this is the piece that's extremely frustrating on our part, which has really kicked in for us too, because our group is mostly emergency medicine. So the payers love to downcode 8.5s to 8.4s because they don't think it's an emergency. We've seen it range from 8.5s to 8.3s, 8.3s to 8.2s. Even our HM side, which is a small group, but they're still downcoding as well. So the biggest thing is the trigger. You got to make sure you're looking for it, number one. Number two, we need to hold the payers accountable. We have a process in place where our teams have identified the issues. We can go, even if it's a 4% or even if it's a 55% difference than what we expected to get paid, we're going to go after them. And they don't like to take MedRex. A lot of them don't like taking MedRex in the beginning, but the minute you submit the MedRex, oh yes, you're right, should get paid. That's another piece that's very frustrating to me. I had a nice conversation with two reps from Centene and UHC when I was at a conference last fall. They couldn't tell me why. Why, if we send you MedRex, why are you downcoding? She goes, well, they may not be being looked at initially. That's not an answer.
No.
So, and it's causing them more work, it's causing us more work, and truthfully, I hate to say this, but I think they feel providers just aren't going to put the effort in, and that's not the case.
Yeah. I mean, Chris, I think you're absolutely right. I think the provider community, not that they're ignoring it, but they continue to optimize for denials and anticipate Caroline denials, where to Chris's point, you have to assume this is going to happen with all of your payers, that all of your payers have the potential to downcode your services. And whatever mechanism you're utilizing to audit your reimbursement and audit your payment and ensure that you're being paid on the same CPT code that you submitted, you have to begin that process today, if you haven't already done so. Because denials, claims are going to pay late, claims are going to be denied, and now we can assume that claims are also going to be downcoded.
Yeah. And Janet, I know you mentioned earlier that your team is using Adonis, and we've talked a little bit about Athena Health as well. I would love to learn a little bit more about how you're like approaching that workflow. So if your team gets an alert in Adonis that there is an issue on the payer behavior side, what does resolving that actually look like? Like, how does your team go about that? And how does that connect back into Athena and your like day-to-day operations?
Yeah. So what we end up doing is we run reports. We have a few types of way we run the report. We typically we start with like for the last year, we'll run a downcode report, and it's really easy to read the downcode reports on Adonis because it will have a column of what we billed and then a column of what was actually paid at. So I feel like it's easier to figure out downcoded claims than it is denials. Granted, it could be because that's what I'm focused on, but the claim was downcoded. We did not get paid what we were supposed to. It's a clean slate. We need to go get the money that we were actually supposed to get the money for on that. And so we'll run a report for the whole year for all of our payers. And then we started at the top with these are the payers that we have the most money that has been downcoded, and we've gone after those. And then we are like going after the smaller amounts even now. Like it doesn't matter who the payer is. If there's downcoding there, we are going after. And once we download that, we have it separated to different teams, and we'll have our teams go ahead and they'll go ahead and do the reconsiderations and then the appeals with that. And we've had great success once we've done those reconsiderations and appeals with some of the payers. It's pretty amazing. Like this is working. They're actually paying at the rate they were supposed to once we've done the reconsideration. So it's great to have those tools with Adonis to be able to pinpoint what is going on.
So, Caroline, just one thing to follow up on that piece too is in the beginning when we really started to dig into this too, we identified like the top five that were hugely not paying us. Now, the fact that with the help of Adonis and the processes we put in place for our teams to work these, because they're working them either through the portal or directly through Athena, we're now able to jump out and do our smaller payers. So we're gaining leverage on that piece too. So even the ones in the beginning that were downcoding that were smaller payers, we weren't able to touch them. Now that we have a pattern in place, a process in place, it really has worked well that, hey, we're looking for this now. We're going to go after these as well.
Yeah,
So,
like it's enabling you to go after that many more.
correct.
That's great.
And
And
Chris, you're finding the smaller payers they're continuing to roll out their downcoding strategy.
Yeah, for the most part, Michelle, they are. They really, I think they're all jumping on the bandwagon, to be honest, is
Yeah.
really the only way to
Yeah.
put it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we'll even take a look at Medicaid and Medicare. If you're not paying us what the expected rate is, we're going to go appeal those.
Pursue that there. Yeah.
So,
yeah, that makes sense. And I feel like we're getting a little bit more into your team story here. So want to just switch to this next slide and kind of get into the nitty-gritty here. I would love to learn more about the strategies you guys have implemented and kind of when you first, like going back when you first realized this was happening at scale, how you decided to approach it, how you decided this should live with our revenue integrity team, and that's going to be who's in charge of tackling this, and kind of the story of what's become possible ever since. I know we touched on that a little bit, but would love to just hear more about that in general from Chris and Janet.
Sure. So our managed care team was monitoring these too, but of course they're doing contracting and negotiating and everything too. So, it was one thing, it was there as a priority, but probably not as well seen as it could have been. At that point, our manager, Tennille, stepped in and said, "Hey, this is really a revenue cycle side of it. I really would like to take this over." And this was about 2.5 years ago. That's when she approached me and said, "Hey, I'd like you to manage this team, but we're building it basically from the ground up." We jumped in. I listened to what she wanted to look at. We did a lot of research, a lot of digging. Um, that was April of 25. I came to her in July of 25 and said, "I need some help because the volume is outstanding." She goes, "Do you have someone in mind?" And I said, "Yes." So Janet was one of my first top picks. She's been a great help here. We have another individual that works on a team as well. We basically work a lot with our offshore teams on the submissions and reconsiderations. But we did a lot of tweaking of the reports on Adonis. Adonis worked very hard with us in the beginning to identify what we really need to need. We added a lot, we took away. Um, then we really focused hard on what we did. Um, Set through. Janet has been pivotal in working through processes and SOPs to nail signs off and just go for it. So it's been one of those processes that it really was from the ground up, even though it was continuing to happen and was being monitored. It's now at a level where we are actively working hard at this, submitting thousands of claims back to payers to say you didn't pay us at the rate you needed to. SOPs are created for everything that we do. We identify. We also have once a month we get a payer policy report from one of our individuals who takes just a full week to look at all of our major payers and say, is something changing? So, Michelle, that's what we're doing. We get identified probably earlier than later that some changes are coming down the road.
Yep.
Which has been a great asset to us as well. But I don't know if I've missed anything, Janet, or not, but for the most part that, we've really dug into doing this. And over the past 2 years, we've been very successful, but we still have a long road ahead of us.
No, I don't think you really missed anything. Another piece is after we've done the reconsiderations, a lot of times we will go back through and check to see, did they pay? Did they not pay? Is this working? Is this not working? Some payers, it works great and they do pay. And then some payers, we look at it and are like, we've submitted a whole bunch of reconsiderations and appeals and they're still not paying. So it's definitely payer based what the payers are still doing with it afterwards. But most of the payers are going ahead and repaying at the correct rates.
And just one thing to add on that piece of it too is that if we find it's not working, we'll make the due effort. If we find out, we've developed special adjustment codes that we bundle all these claims up and submit them to our legal department to go after the payer. Because we're not wasting any time at this point, too. We've done everything the payers asked us to do, and they're still not paying. So now it's time for legal to step in.
Yeah. And Chris, Janet, are you pursuing gold cards with any of these payers where you repeatedly appeal, your appeal is acknowledged and reprocessed, you're paid at the rate that you claimed initially, where they'll say, okay, 90% of the time we reverse our decision, we're going to gold card you and stop downcoding you.
So we've not seen that, Michelle.
Okay.
Gold card, that's probably the first time I've heard that. It's not what I heard it called before, but I've heard that.
Well, I know it's like a prior authorization term. I just didn't know if there was an equivalent in the downcoding world where you can get to a point with a payer where they're like, okay.
The only one we've seen the biggest reaction on was Aetna. They're not doing it as much anymore.
Okay.
Aetna is the one where they come back and we went right after them very quickly, very hard from that aspect of it too. And then the beginning of this year, they finally said, "I think we've had enough of you, and we're
Yeah.
not going to downcode as much."
Okay. So that's great to hear.
Of course, we watch to make sure denials aren't
I was gonna
increasing
say.
either,
Increasing. Yeah.
but right. So, but we watch for that too. So,
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh, go ahead, Michelle. Were you going to add
No, no,
something?
no. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask a little bit more about, I know you guys are using Adonis. I know you're also on Athena, and both Athena and Adonis are like continuing to build out new AI solutions and different platforms for you guys to kind of tackle downcoding and other challenges that you're seeing. Um, as those solutions are being developed, I'd love to hear from you guys. Like, what do you think would be the biggest opportunity for a new technology or a new solution to tackle and make your team more efficient over time? Like, what do you see as the next stage?
um, boy, that's a tough one because it's all every pair is so different. Um, One thing that we're working with Adonis on is to identify stuff that's essentially a denial down code, and we're working with our AI agent to submit MedRecs.
Hmm.
It's becoming a more and more better option for us. The claims are identified by Adonis. We get the MedRecs for them. We submit. We've worked with the teams on appeals reconsiderations, and our pairs are growing on the list that they're doing. We've seen outcomes that are working in some payers and in some payers no. So it's still the same thing too. But I think continuation of the AI modification is great. If a claim come in to Adonis at the same time it came into Athena, we know it's a reconsideration needed and downcode. If it was an automated thing, that would be great. We're not there yet, but that's good. Adonis has done very well. We've worked very hard with them, developing processes, and then we're tweaking it every time. And then the payers really, are everything's going web portal in my mind, so they instantly want everything done through the portal. They don't make the task that easy at times. So future automation from that aspect is probably one thing I could see us doing. But overall, I think we're ahead of the game. Like I told Michelle in our previous conversation, Athena's catching up, but we've been doing this for over a year already, so it's not quite there yet.
Yeah, and I do feel like you guys are ahead of the game. And I think it would be really helpful for the folks who are dialing into this webinar, just who maybe haven't kind of started or gotten to where you guys are yet, to learn if there's any like advice, words of wisdom, or things you wish you knew prior to kind of embarking on this new challenge, that could be helpful for them to think about as they kind of dive into this.
I truthfully think in my mind, if you're not looking at your downcoding, you need to start doing it.
Mhm.
I was in shock when I started to realize what was out there and what we were missing, the amount of money that we were losing out on. Start doing it, start thinking about every aspect of what's going to affect the stuff you want to see, the codes, the amounts, the rock and cart codes, everything that's beneficial. And then just be consistent in that aspect of it. If you find it, go after the payer, have a conversation with your payer rep, or and then get a process in place. You'll be surprised on the outcome that if you don't, a lot of people say they don't have the time. It may be worth another FTE to make that time. It really is.
Hmm.
I think overall that it's just a good working relationship with your teams are another big thing that's very helpful. And making sure that everybody understands what the process is, what the ultimate goal is, and where we're going.
Yeah, that makes
Yeah,
sense.
what the process is and what we're looking for, because again, it is Caroline, it is different than a denial. So it's really working with those payment posting teams, working with your PM, your payment posting teams, and whatever mechanism you have to actually surface these downcoded claims. Um, like Chris said, I think everybody will be surprised at the dollars they are forfeiting at the end of the year by not pursuing these claims.
Great. And before we round out, I know we just have a few minutes left. Michelle, maybe you could start off here. I'd love to just round robin with what you feel like feels most important for revenue cycle teams to focus on next. I know we talked a lot about downcoding, but if there's anything that you're like, this is where we need to shift our focus to after this, what would that be and why?
Yeah. I kind of feel like we came full circle here. So, I do think downcoding, E&M coding accuracy policies that these payers are rolling out, and as Chris and Janet have both attested, we're seeing expansion of these E&M coding accuracy programs. I mean, this isn't the end of it. There will be another program, another initiative, and I think having a business office that is dynamic and able to iterate and looking for identifying the problem and then looking for the tools that can help you support that. It's going to be so important over the next 3 to 5 years. There's a lot out there. There are a lot of other tools that can be brought in to layer on top of your practice management system that can help you address these things. But downcoding, it's just the latest program to either slow or reduce payment, and there will be others. So it's good to have a team that can mobilize quickly and get a plan in place, a plan of action in place. Chris?
So I think the biggest thing for me is I totally agree with everything you said, Michelle. The other thing too, Caroline, is don't take your foot off the gas.
Yep.
If you see a payer that's started to say, "Oh, well, we're downcoding as much, we're going to ease up," just keep going after them. If it drops from 1,000 claims a month to 200, still go after it. That's money that's available to you. Just don't stop, and then look for everything. Look for all payers to jump on the bandwagon with this.
Mhm.
They just, for some reason, it's becoming habitual, I guess is the only way to put it. But there's an opportunity to make a lot more money. There's an opportunity to get paid at what you really should get paid for. So again, my father used to say that don't take your foot off the gas if you want to get something. So
Yeah, I love that. Janet, any last thoughts from you?
I just think it's the other thing I would say is when you're after you put your foot on the gas, also track what you have um sent out there, because that tracking is super important of to show you what you've gotten in. And so that way you can say, hey, okay, so this is working and this is not working.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for taking the time to speak with us today, Chris, Janet, and Michelle. This was awesome. I know our attendees are definitely have learned a lot and have a lot to take away. So thank you everyone for listening in. We have a couple of resources we're going to follow up with later today, as well as the recording. But if there are any questions we didn't get to that came through the chat, I'll be following up with those as well. And if anything else comes up, feel free to reach out to marketing@adonis.io or visit us at adonis.io to learn more. But thank you all.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Bye.